Good
Hello.
morning or good evening to you.
Yeah, good evening. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. That's good.
I am here with Anthony Chaffee, who is a carnivore legend. Definitely would put you up there with the celebrities, but not in a bad way.
Okay.
um, so would you just briefly introduce yourself, what it is that you do, some of your passions?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. It's a pleasure. Well, I'm a medical doctor from America. I currently live in Australia where I'm here practicing. I'm a neurosurgical resident or registrar, as they call it here. But for the last 25 years, I've researched diet and nutrition and how that affects health and chronic disease, and have been applying that into my medical practice for the past well, at least 5 years now. And I've just found that that's one of the main tools that can be used as clinicians to really help our patients and to treat the root cause of many diseases, many chronic diseases that simply just didn't exist a century ago, and even 40 years ago, not nearly in the prevalence that they are now today. So I think that this is one of the biggest issues of our time medically. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people around the world, billions of people that are eating the wrong things, being told that the wrong things are healthy. And so they're unknowingly eating the wrong thing, getting sick, getting
Mhm.
overweight, getting metabolic issues, getting reliant on copious amounts of medications, and suffering for decades until they die an early death, which I think is absolutely abhorrent. And so when you're talking about that scale, hundreds of millions of people, billions of people, really, and the tens of trillions of dollars we're spending a year, first of all, eating a whole bunch of garbage that we don't need or want, and then taking the medications that are treating the symptoms of that toxicity from eating the wrong things. I think that that is, if you can't get passionate about that, I don't know much that you can get passionate about. So that's been sort of my drive for a long time, is trying to educate people and get this information out there so that people can live healthy lives and not need medications or supplements or thousand other different gimmicks to get good health. They'll just be healthy. The natural
Yeah.
state of humanity, of every animal on earth, is one of health. We are the
Mm.
sickest species on earth. You just don't see this in the wild, and you certainly don't see this in native populations. It just
Yeah.
doesn't happen when they're living naturally. When they come to the cities and they eat the same garbage that everyone else is eating, they get sick. They even get more sick because they're more genetically susceptible. So I think that's a
Mm.
major issue, and that's something that I've been trying to work on to help educate people for the last few years.
And you've been doing a really good job. I've
Thank you.
seen you explode these past couple of years for all good reasons. Every video clip I see you in, you're saying something that is really, really um striking. Like it's like, wow, that's really something to think about. And I appreciate you just choose your words very carefully. And that's what people need. In this carnivore community, I think that we hear a lot of the same things like meat is good for you. We were designed to eat meat, but those are just the basics. And what I hear you getting into is the nitty gritty. Um, and this is why all this other stuff is poison. Did you start your career in the medical field before you became carnivore, or when did that happen?
Well, I became carnivore a bit unknowingly. So I didn't know I was doing carnivore per se. I didn't know that I was eating a traditional, diet. I wasn't thinking, paleo. I wasn't thinking a certain diet. Even though I knew growing up that humans were apex predators, top of the food chain, and apex predators are carnivores by definition, and so that is something that we should have all thought of a long time ago, and many people have. To be fair, we've just papered over it in the 1970s and 80s when we started vilifying fat and cholesterol and meat as a byproduct of that. But I came to carnivore when I was in my undergraduate degree before I went to medical school, and we just learned how toxic plants were. I took biology, botany, biochemistry, cancer biology, and in my cancer biology class, we were again learning the toxic nature of plants, which is, I mean, I learned that since seventh grade, that plants and animals are in an evolutionary arms race. Plants becoming more and more poisonous, so less and less animals can eat them, so they can survive and thrive. That's their defensive mechanism. That's their evolutionary survival mechanism. And that animals who eat plants, they've evolved specific defenses against specific plants, so they can eat a particular plant and survive and thrive. And that's their, evolved evolutionary niche as well, their biological design. So this is why there are 340,000 plants in the world. Koalas eat one, pandas eat one. Cows, horses, grazing animals, they eat grass and that's it. But they eat specific grasses. They eat different grasses than each other. And the leaves that a gorilla eats are different from the leaves that a deer eats. Those are different from the leaves that a giraffe eats, and so on. And you mix all those leaves around, they all get sick or die. And the same is true for us. And so we were learning this yet again. And I think I must have heard it 50 times before it actually sunk in. But it finally did when I was taking cancer biology, and again, learning how toxic plants were and the toxic nature of plants. And we were looking specifically at carcinogens, because cancer biology, and looked at a lot of these toxins, which could act as carcinogens, precipitate cancer down the road. But what does that mean? That means something that has, 20 years down the line, it doesn't just all of a sudden just everything's perfect and then bang, cancer. It means that it's damaging and disrupting the normal cellular metabolism and tissue and macro metabolism of your body in such a way that eventually it causes so much damage that you can precipitate cancer, but it's damaging you the whole way. And whether or not you ever get cancer, you're still harming yourself. You're still damaging a lot of processes in your body. So we were looking at this, and we're looking at all the different carcinogens that were in plants. And we learned, must have been, I think, 23 years ago now, the early 2000s, if not 2001, that Brussels sprouts alone had 136 known human carcinogens, that just white table mushrooms had over 100. And then spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, broccoli, all these other vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds and beans and legumes and all these things that we eat on a normal basis had dozens, 60, 80, over 100 known human carcinogens. And they were quite abundant. We know this from the 1980s with Professor Bruce Ames from UC Berkeley, published a paper in 1989 showing that there were 10,000 times more naturally occurring toxins in vegetables than the pesticides we were spraying on them by weight. And that naturally occurring toxins in mushrooms with a corresponding amount of pesticides, in this case, alar, in that study, that the mushrooms were 500 times more likely to cause cancer than in laboratory tests than the alar, right?
Wow.
So we were very blown away by this. And I remember thinking this must be a joke. He's, this is insane what this guy's saying, but he wasn't joking. And I remember thinking in my head, I was like, look, when it dawned on me, okay, this guy's serious. I was like, but vegetables are still good for you though, right? And I remember him just looking at us, and I just felt he read my mind, because he looked at us and he said, I don't eat salad. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. So I was like, right, forget plants. And this is something that I knew. This is something that I knew from seventh grade biology and before, that this is how plants defend themselves. So of course plants are trying to defend themselves. Not that they necessarily want you dead so that you rot in the ground and they can absorb you, but maybe. But they certainly don't want to be eaten. And they certainly don't want other things eating them, destroying them, eating their leaves, digging up their roots, eating their babies, and which is their seeds, and all these sorts of things. So they do defend themselves, and they will defend themselves with deadly force if necessary. And in fact, most commonly they do. The vast majority of plants on Earth are inedible, meaning that they're so toxic that even a small amount will kill you. Well, that doesn't mean that the edible ones are 100% safe. It just means that we have more defenses against the poisons. But all the edible plants that we eat will kill many other animals. In fact, most other animals, right? Because most plants will kill most animals. And that's because animals have different defenses against plants, and some don't have much at all. This is why felines are considered obligate carnivores, because most plants will just kill them. And yet they can get, a house cat can get up to 60% of its calories from carbohydrates, but we still call it, we don't call it an omnivore. We call it a carnivore, an obligate carnivore. It really needs to eat meat. I think we're in the same category. We have to eat meat. There are nutrients that we have to get from meat that we cannot get from plants. But there's nothing in plants that we have to get that we cannot get from meat. And those plants come with a battery of negatives as well. So I think that in very real terms, humans are obligate carnivores as well for optimal health. right? We can get away with more than a cat can, but that doesn't mean that we're going to do it safely. And that doesn't mean we're going to do it unscathed. So yeah, so I did that. I came to that before medical school, didn't realize how, significant that was, didn't put that in the context of just humanity in general. Like, hey, we're all eating the wrong thing. And everyone else could feel as superhuman as I do, because, I just didn't think, I just felt amazing. I was only eating meat, only eating eggs because it was just by default, right? Because everything was plants, everything had plants in it. And so I just walked around the store. I was just like, what the hell do I eat? And I came across eggs and meat, and I'm like, all right, those don't come from plants, so I'll just eat those. So my only criteria was do not grow from the ground. It's like you have
Mm.
to have moved and had a face, and that's it.
Yeah,
That was my
had a
only
face.
criteria, and it just did not come from plants, right? So that was my criteria, and I did that for 5 years. I felt absolutely amazing. I didn't have anyone to talk about. I didn't know there was anything to talk about. And I just lived my life and felt like a superhero. But because I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, and I didn't like realize, like, wait a minute, this is how we lived for the last 2.5 million years. And this is how we optimally live in different populations, and realize, okay, this is really significant. I really need to latch onto this and look into it more. After eventually, I was living in England playing rugby, and I sort of slipped off of it because a lot of the meat there was breaded or had like crumbing. And I remember thinking, well, is it that bad? Dose makes the poison. It's not all that much. And you hear this, people still say this today, dose makes the poison. It's probably hermetic. It's probably good. Well, no, I'm sorry. Just a little bit of breading sometimes on the chicken was enough to take me down. And I remember a couple months into it thinking, why don't I feel as just superhuman amazing as I normally do? And I didn't know why. I didn't know what was going on. I figured I was just 25 now. I was just over the hill, and I was just, dying, um, but it was really because that's when things started slipping back in. And the biggest thing is that other things started slipping back in after that. After I didn't have like the hard, like, I will not have any plants at all. Then it became, well, a little bit and a little bit, and who cares? And all of a
Right.
sudden I was just eating more normally again and not feeling great as a result. And so it wasn't until much later that well, first of all, I took off, several years, like 10 years, after, really, I took off several years, from between my undergraduate degree and medical school to play professional rugby. And so I was doing that. So I had a bit of a break. And then, during medical school, I wasn't doing carnivore. And then as a doctor, I was practicing for a few years, and then took some time off, was doing humanitarian work. And then after that, finally sort of came around to this in 2000, I want to say 2018, early 2018, like February 2018. And then it really made sense to me. And then it was just like, no, wait, this is actually how, we're designed. Like, humans actually are carnivores as a species, and that's just the kind of animal that we are. And that makes sense. We're apex predators, top of the food chain. And I was doing this for 5 years. And that was the 5 years I've never felt better in my entire life. I've never performed better, felt better, played better, anything. That was like the peak of my existence, was those 5 years. And I was like, right, I knew it. I knew plants were trying to kill me, get rid of these stupid things. And I just kicked them all out, started eating a lot more fatty meat. And my body just changed. I just started shedding weight, shedding fat, and stacking on muscle at 38 years old. And within 2 weeks of kicking that stuff, I felt like I was 22 again. And I went
Yeah.
out and started playing professional rugby. So, and I just felt amazing. And I started training again with my team in Seattle Saracens, which then turned into the Seattle Seawolves, which is the professional MLR team in Seattle. And that was the first year that they were going in the MLR. And I just felt amazing. And I just started, playing and getting better and better and better. And unfortunately, I had a knee injury, so I wasn't able to actually, play out the season. But
Mm.
physically, I felt amazing, and so that was not a problem. And but since then, I started looking at that from the perspective of the doctor, and looking at chronic disease, and realizing that humans are carnivores that are not eating as such, and we're
Mm.
getting all these plant toxins and defense chemicals, and that is harming us just like it would any other animal. You go to the zoo, there's signs that say don't feed the animals, it makes them very sick. And zookeepers will tell you they get obesity, heart disease, liver disease, diabetes, cancer, arthritis, autoimmune issues, just like we do. They say if you feed animals human foods, they get human diseases. That's pretty straightforward, right? If they eat what we eat, they
Wow.
get the diseases we get, right? So stop eating the food is the short answer there, and eat what we're supposed to eat. And so when I was looking at that, um, from medicine, things just started slotting into place. Everything just made sense instantly. Like medicine's not all that hard, but there's a lot of it. And there can be a lot of complex interactions and complex
Mhm.
procedures and all that sort of stuff and anatomy. But the main thing is that there's just a lot of it. And you don't really know why most of these things are happening. We just know that they do happen. And then this is
Mhm.
just what happens when they happen. Well, now I understand why they happen and I actually know how to treat that, not just treat the symptoms, but
Yeah.
to stop it from happening in the first place and have it go away. And that is, I don't know, it's very empowering for me as a doctor. And I feel it's very empowering for my patients as well, because they say, hey, this is completely in your control. There's something you can do. And you don't need fancy medicine. You don't need to pay doctors a bunch of money. You just need to eat certain things to your biological design. All these problems go away.
Wow, that's so powerful. I mean, I feel empowered as a coach, being able to help people identify the root cause and also telling them, no, you don't have to get on supplements. I'm not going to put you through a
Mhm.
detox regime or anything like that. We're just going to support your body with the proper foods and see where it takes you. And most of the time, like 98% of the time, these people exceed their expectations and they're
Mhm.
living their best life. And so I can only imagine what you experience as a doctor, where people, very, very sick people, are looking to you as the authority. And do you ever get kickback from your peers in the medical field or from your family or friends?
No, not much. I mean, certainly probing questions,
Right.
right? Like sort of half in disbelief, like, wait, really? Like only me? But it sort of helps that I'm, in good shape and
Right.
pretty effortlessly. I don't have to actually work out all that often. And yet I maintain, a muscular physique with fairly low body fat percentage. And when I work out, obviously it gets much better. But in general, I'm in better shape than anyone else at the hospital, right? So,
Yeah.
most people in medicine are quite out of shape and quite unhealthy themselves, which isn't great either, because that's also not the norm. That's not what we used to see, and it's not great. I mean, you can't pour from an empty cup, and if you have a bunch of unhealthy doctors and nurses and practitioners, healthcare practitioners, then they're not going to be able to help as many people because they're not going to be as well, right? They need help themselves. So, being in good shape and you say, like, oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? I mean, like, no, I don't. Oh, you work out all the time. How do you find the time? I'm like, I really don't work out. I haven't been in the gym in 3 months. They're like, oh, bullshit. And it's just like, no, really. I mean, this is 100% diet. And they're like, okay, well, what the hell do you eat? And I tell them, they're like, really? And so it goes, it can go quite against, what they've heretofore thought to be the right way to eat, but they're seeing how this works, and they're doing what they think is a good diet. They're not getting very good results. They're someone who's doing the exact opposite and is getting very good results. And so it's like, well, it doesn't really matter what a study says or this says or that says. What matters is what actually happens in real life, right? You can
Right.
have a study that says that rocks fall up, but I don't care, right? Because I can see that they don't, right?
Right.
I can throw a couple rocks and we can test that theory pretty quickly. So, it does help, and it does help that I have the answers. This is something that I've looked into very thoroughly for a number of years, and that's added on to a pretty large background of education and experience before that. And so, because of that, it's um it's a bit more believable, and so I talk to people and they listen and they challenge. They say, well, what about cholesterol? What about fiber? What about all the nutrients? What about cancer? What about this? What about this? And those are all really important questions. Those are all very
Yeah.
fair questions, but they all have answers. And so because I can show them that, and I can show them the literature, and I can show them the studies, and I can show them the data in the peer reviewed top medical journals and scientific journals, they go, damn it, okay, there you go. And so most people will actually try it themselves, or at least start eating more meat and not be afraid of the fat,
Yeah.
which is very good.
Yeah. That's awesome. I've also experienced a lot of respect from people after my transformation. When I
Mhm.
was really sick, I was keto for over 15 years, and I constantly was trying to encourage people like, you don't need the carbs, you need electrolytes, blah, blah, you need animal fat. I was on board with all that, but I hadn't let go of my anti-nutrients. And
Mm.
I was very sick, and people didn't care. And I don't blame them. Um, and then when I healed, I really just kept my head down for a long time. And I ate lamb, salt, and water for a year. And I transformed. And my rheumatologist, my chiropractor, just people that I was seeing were so curious. You're like, what are you
Mm.
doing? And not just my physical transformation, but my mood. I had severe mood disorders. I was a different person.
Mm.
And it was so incredible to be able to share what I'm passionate about, and to be able to be given the opportunity, for people to actually listen to what I have to say, because now I can lead by example. Now they see that it's effective. And so I think that, what you're saying with your peers respecting you because you look great. By
Mm.
the way, how old are you? If you don't mind me
Uh,
asking.
yeah, no, it's fine. I'm 43.
You look like you're in your 20s. You look so good. And
Nice.
it speaks wonders. So I'm not like a person to like, I don't want to be vain and tell everyone you have to look a certain way, but it does speak volumes when you walk the walk. Um, so before, you mentioned that you were eating fatty meat and the importance of animal fat, which I agree. Have you ever tracked your macros on the carnivore way of eating, or are you just eating fatty meat?
No, I'm purely eating intuitively. I've just never done that anyway. I just couldn't be bothered. I never really thought it was useful. But I do think that if you're eating intuitively and you're eating the right things that you can eat intuitively. And
Mm-hmm.
so you will never see an animal in the wild pull out a calculator to try to figure out their macros or try to do some, long division on, calories in, calories out, all that sort of,
Yeah.
so I climbed up 3 trees today. One was 18 meters. I was 17. It's just like, Jesus Christ. Animals just eat, right? They eat what they're
Yeah.
supposed to eat, and they eat until it stops tasting good. And they eat until they just go, yeah, that's enough. Right.
Yeah.
And even when there's abundance, they know when to stop. So, there's something in them telling them that. And of course there is. We already have words for it. We have hunger, satiety. So we have words that actually mean exactly that. Your body's telling you you need to eat, or your body's telling you you don't need to eat. Right. It's just that our satiety signals and our hunger signals have been hijacked by the
Right.
garbage that we're eating, and it's disrupting our hormonal signals that normally tell us when to start and stop. And so if you're not doing that, and you've got all that stuff out of the way, and you're just eating what you're supposed to eat, then you can actually listen to your hunger signals. You can actually listen to your satiety signals. And so I just eat until fatty meat stops tasting good.
Yep.
And people say, well, don't you ever get tired of that? First of all, absolutely not. And second of all, by definition, absolutely not, right? Because do cows ever get sick of eating grass? Do lions ever get sick of eating gazelle? No, because when they're hungry, it tastes better. But there's a negative feedback loop. So when you're eating something that you're supposed to eat and your body wants it, first it tastes really good because your body wants those nutrients. But then it actually gives a negative feedback. So it actually dampens your hunger signals and your pleasure signals for that same
Mhm.
food. So each bite gets successively less good until
Mm,
eventually it just stops tasting good. And you just go, I'm not enjoying that. Why? It's the same piece of meat cooked at the same time in the same manner, and yet it tastes different. It tasted amazing here, and now it's say, "Ugh, I'm not really enjoying it." And if you keep eating it and you keep forcing yourself to eat it, it will taste bad, and you will have to force yourself to do that. And some people do because they're just used to eating certain portion sizes. And they say, "Well, this is how much I made. This is how much I'm going to eat." And they say, "Well, I get halfway through, I really enjoy it, and then after that, I have to force myself to finish it. It takes me 2 hours to finish it." And I, tell them, it was just like, "Well, actually, you were finished about 2 hours ago.
right.
That was when your body was telling you stop eating." And so, no, I just completely eat intuitively, but I do make sure that I am eating until meat stops tasting good. I think if you're still getting that pleasure reward for eating meat, then that means your body still wants it. So you want to get to the point your body says, no, that's enough. And because it's very easy to undereat on a carnivore diet as well,
Yes.
because those satiety signals are so different. Your hunger signals are so different. They're so much more subtle that you can just feel fine all the time. My dad both my parents came onto this just from seeing my example and seeing how well I was doing, and just me reading and finding out different things, and like, "Oh, look at this study and look at this study and look at this study and look at," I was just very interested in it, and they became very interested in it, and so they decided to try it, and they both are still on it, and they're both doing amazingly well. And I remember 6 months in, my mom asked my dad, Kenneth, are you hungry? Would you like me to cook you something? And he just looked at her and said, I haven't been hungry in 6 months. Like, it's just, you know,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah,
Wow.
and so it's, yeah, because you don't feel hungry in the same way. So
Yeah.
you have to read your hunger signals. And so that's why I think it's easy to undereat, and you have to eat until fatty meat stops tasting good. So that's the only counting I do, is just making sure that I get as much as my body's asking for.
Wow. That's powerful. What would you say for a person who has struggled with a binge eating disorder for maybe, almost a lifelong binge eating disorder, comes to carnivore and still finds themselves not being satiated with fatty meat? Would you just say
Like,
keep eating it?
well, I mean, the thing is that it's eventually it is going to taste bad. I mean, I'm sure there can be exceptions to that rule. People have, like, like pica and things like that, they just insatiably eat. But it could be also that, they, eating the right thing, that they would be satisfied as well. Sometimes when people have these sorts of disorders, it's because their bodies are craving a certain nutrient that they're just not getting,
Right.
and they end
Right.
up eating until they get that. And so, I don't think anyone's ever tested that. But, I'm not saying that there are no exceptions to that, but I think for the vast majority of people, that, when you're eating exactly the right thing, no carbs, no sugar, no
Yeah.
artificial sweeteners, you're not on any medications like, cortisol, hydrocortisone, prednisone, prednisolone, or anything like that, that will absolutely ramp up your hunger signals, that that you just eat for what you're hungry for, right? And the thing is, it's going to become unpleasant when your body stops
Mhm.
wanting it. So, you can try it. And that's the thing. I've worked with several people with eating disorders now, and they have all told me that this is actually really helpful to them,
Yeah.
because they don't have to worry about limiting themselves. They don't have to worry about, well, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to get fat, or I'm going to get sick, or I'm going to get this, or I have to, like, you know, binge on this and then purge. Oh my God, this is so bad for me. Now I have to get it out of me. They're craving these nutrients, so they go eat it, and they binge, and then they get rid of it. Or people that have had just excessive eating, they're just used to eating a lot. Those are the ones that sometimes find that they're just used to eating a certain portion size, and they just keep eating past that point, because, well,
Mhm.
that's how much I want to eat, that's how much I'm going to eat.
Yeah.
And so every now and then I'll have a patient come in my, my functional medicine practice, where they will not as much anymore, because I really do, painstakingly uh, describe all this to them. But one lady came in, and she was overweight, and asked her, I was like, okay, so how are you doing? And she said, I hate it. I hate the carnivore diet. I hate eating meat. I hate it. I don't want to do this anymore. And it's just like, I hate it. And I was just like, okay, well, what do you hate about it? It's like, it takes me 2 hours to finish any meal. I'm just sitting there. I'm just force feeding myself, and I just hate it. It's miserable. Meat doesn't taste good. I don't want to eat it. And so I asked her, I was like, okay, so does it always taste bad? Even right at the beginning when you first start the meal? And sort of begrudgingly, she said, well, no. At first it tastes really good, but then I get sort of halfway through it, and it stops tasting good and it starts tasting bad. And then it's just a struggle, and I hate it. And that's when I explain, okay, well, look, that's your body telling you you don't need to eat anymore. And that's sort of when, like, oh, okay. So, sometimes people are eating a lot less than they think they should eat. But,
Right.
if you're getting to that point where your body's just saying, stop it, I think you can trust that. Some days I didn't eat when I was losing body fat. It wasn't all that often, but it was a couple of times where just like a steak just sounded horrible to me, even though I'd worked
Mm.
out for, like, done like a 3-hour gym session, 3-hour rugby session. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go have a steak. And everything in me was like, ugh, it sounds terrible. Like, why?
Wow.
Why would that sound terrible? I love steak. Steak's my favorite. But everything in me was telling me not to eat it. So I tried to eat it anyway. Tasted horrible, and I was just like, I'm just not enjoying this. I'm just gonna stop. And I was quite nervous about that. And I was nervous that I wasn't going to have the same energy the next day, and I wasn't going to be able to perform to the level that I needed to the next day. But sure enough, I felt great the next day. And of course, I had weeks and weeks and weeks of energy available. And right now, I've got weeks, right? Anybody, even very slender people, have weeks of energy
Sure.
available in their fat stores. And I was, I had, a lot more fat at that point, because this was early on. And so I was, I still had, 20, 30 pounds of fat on me that I didn't need, and so that's the thing, it is easy to undereat. You do want to make sure you're eating to satiety and eating to the point that it stops tasting good. But if you get to that, even after 6 bites, just stop. It's okay. It'll taste good later. Right. And so I think that can help people with eating disorders. I think a lot of eating disorders, a lot of eating disorders did become much more prevalent after we started vilifying meat and fat and saying,
Right.
don't eat a bunch of horrible tasting vegetables that make you feel like garbage. And so people, maybe avoided all the meat and all the fat, and that's what their bodies were craving. And I sort of think of it going down sort of a couple different pathways. And from people I've spoken to, this seems to match up. Obviously, eating disorders are multifactorial. It can be a lot of,
Yeah.
trauma and stress and things like that can play into this. But one thing that I have seen is that some people will, they'll be craving these nutrients, but they won't eat them. But their body's telling me, like, you need to eat this fat, you need to eat this stuff. And then they'll just sort of cave and they'll binge. And then you'll just feel, oh my God, what have I done? I'm going to get a heart attack. I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be fat. I'm going to be all these sorts of things. And then they purge. Right.
Yeah.
Or they're just not going to eat that stuff no matter what. But they also don't want to eat any of the other crap because it makes them feel like garbage. It doesn't make them feel good. And so they
Yeah.
just don't eat anything,
Yeah.
and so, and I've spoken to people like that. I've spoken to people who went vegan, not because they wanted to be vegan, but because they didn't want to eat anything. And it was a lot easier for them to use as an excuse and say, oh, no, I'm vegan. No, there's nothing vegan here. No, I just want to eat. That's okay. That's
Oh,
okay. I'll eat when I get home.
that's
And they
so
just don't
sad.
eat. Yeah. And, I knew one girl who said that she went to a lot of vegan buffet places because, like the soup and the bread, it was just easier to purge. It was easier to
Oh
bring
yeah, I've
back
heard
up,
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's another thing as well. So when you're actually just eating normal food, and you understand that this is good for you, it's not going to make you fat, it's going to make you healthy, it's not going to harm you, it's not going to give you heart disease or anything like that. People look at that very positively. I'm working with a girl now who was very anorexic, very, like, dangerously anorexic. She's eating meat now and she loves it. She wants to eat meat. She wants to eat more meat. And she's really enjoying that. And she's enjoying putting on healthy weight again.
Yeah.
It's a long, slow process. She was actually put in the hospital because she was very anemic and had other sorts of issues. And so they were running a bunch of tests and things like that. And they wouldn't let her eat meat. It was absolutely crazy. She's like, this is really pissing me off. And they're saying, no, you can't eat that stuff. It was just carbs and sugar, carbs and sugar, carbs
Oh
and
yeah.
sugar. And she's like, I don't want to eat this, And they're like, well, if you don't eat it, we're gonna stick a feeding tube
Eating
down
tube.
your
Oh yeah. I
yeah.
lived it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was saying, it's not that I don't want to eat. I just don't want to eat that crap. Just let
Right.
me bring it. They're like, no, that's not healthy. You're not
Right.
allowed to eat. Right. Which is just insane, is absolutely insane that,
Yeah.
you have someone who wants to eat and you're telling them they're not allowed to eat. Right.
Right.
Who is anorexic. Right.
Right.
Like, that is so backwards. It's just mind boggling to me. So when she's able to eat meat, she's loving it. She loves it. She feels good. She's feeling better. She's putting on weight and she's happy about it. And so I think that that's a very, very good thing.
That's so good. Speaking on eating disorders, it's a very, I'm really passionate about working with people with eating disorders. I did not become so sickly thin because of an eating disorder. I had a chronic C. diff infection, but
Mm.
I was held against my will in an eating disorder unit in UNC Chapel Hill in the acute clinic. And they threatened to hook me up to a feeding tube. My first meal was a burger patty on 2 pieces of bread, and that was it. And I was like, I'm still hungry. And they literally wouldn't allow me to eat more because they said my stomach was too small. And the amount of carbs that they forced us to eat, I mean, I literally ate 6 apples every day. I had portions of sweet potatoes this big. I would eat 4 at a time to get to my carb limit. They didn't have much real fat there. All the butter was fake. I was, trying to eat peanut butter to get fat. I was desperate. I mean, my mood disorders were a million times worse. I developed more autoimmune issues after I came out of there. I had the worst keto rash of my life. And when I told them I have autoimmune issues, I can't eat, I can't eat a lot of these things. They flare me up. They literally told me that it was all in my head. Like the doctor of this place said, it's all in your head. And it was torture. And my family, of course, they were just scared. They're like, we don't know what to do. They went to my family and said, you can't believe your daughter. She has an eating disorder. And so after that experience, it was horrible, but I really felt like God was telling me, like, you're going to get through this and you're going to be able to help other people. And I learned just from getting to know the other kids in the unit, the diet is one of the main reasons that people have eating disorders. Not the only reason, like you said, but like my roommate at the time this was like her 20th something eating disorder unit. She was older than I was. She just lived in them. And she kept going back to the same things. She lived on Miralax, and she believed all the lies that she was fed. And so she was chronically sick and chronically struggling because she felt sick. And so when I got out of there and gained weight with meat, I gained 65 pounds in 1 year. And I not once had the feeling that I wanted to tear off my own skin. I loved every bit of it. I felt awesome. You feel healthy. And so for anyone watching who is nervous about gaining weight and how that feels, it feels different when you eat the right foods. It feels different when your hormones are working, your sex drive comes back, your mood comes back, your energy comes back. It's incredible. And that's what I want for people like your patient who you're working with. Her experiences, it's incredible to feel the difference of the type of foods that you're eating. So I just love that you're doing that. That's awesome.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm very glad that you were able to get away from those people and do what you knew was right for your body and to heal yourself and to get healthy again. It may be interesting to go back to them and just say, hey, just
I have.
for your own professional development, this is what happened. I was trying to do this other thing. You were telling me, no, I couldn't eat this. That was making, you said it was in my head, but it really wasn't. When I eat these things, I get sick objectively. I get a rash, I get a flare up, I get an objective reaction to that. I'm not eating that now and I don't have that. And it's not just me, it's tens of thousands of people around the world with autoimmune issues. And this is being written up. There's obviously the Harvard study, but
Which one are you referring to?
The one that Dr. Baker worked on with
Okay.
that, it was a survey of over 2,000 people doing carnivore and just saying, hey, what happened to you? What are your health issues and what sort of things happen? So, it's these nutritional surveys, epidemiological sort of things, but they're exactly as good, if not better, than every other nutritional study out there because they all run the same way. They all basically do diet questionnaires and sort of ask about health and what you're eating and things like that. It's a lot easier when you're on carnivore because you know exactly what you're eating, meat every day. How often do you eat meat in the last 365 days? 365,
Right.
And so, it's a lot easier that way. But there are more, and there's so many in the autoimmune realm as well. I mean, for 100 years, we had literature talking about how food was very important for autoimmunity, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and gout, and all these other sorts of things that we've just papered over in the era of pharmacology. And that's wrong. You're treating symptoms, you're not treating the disease, you're not treating the root cause. And even in the current literature and the recent literature with autoimmunity, it's very much diet related. In fact, Crohn's, for instance, I had one of these idiots sort of get mad at me saying, oh, you can't say that or whatever. And I was like, they're like, there are no studies that say that. And I was just like, here's 8, they're on my phone. Ever read them? And it's like, and you're a gastroenterologist. I am not. Like, why do I know this and you don't?
Yes.
That's not
Right.
good. And so, but there are studies with Crohn's, looking at elemental diet, which is very highly processed, just a powdered drink, but it has, all the macros, most of the micros that we know of that we need. And you can do it, and they have that for epilepsy as well. So there's absolutely no carbs. And that, I talk to people that have autoimmune issues, and they say that one's the best when they have absolutely no carb. Definitely works the best. And that elemental diet, just getting you just the core nutrients and nothing superfluous, that's a better treatment to get people out of an acute flare-up of Crohn's, which is horrible. You're having 20, 30 bloody bowel motions a day, horrible pain. And it's torture to eat anything, and certainly anything with fiber. And just putting them on an elemental diet is quicker at bringing them out of an acute flare-up of Crohn's than steroids like prednisolone, right? Which is the gold standard. It just shuts down your immune system. And what does that say? What's that saying? It's saying just not eating certain things is a better treatment than steroids.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So that means that those things are causing it, by and large, right? I mean, because it just goes away. You stop eating it, the problem goes away, right? You eat it again, it comes back. You stop eating, it goes away. There's another study with, I think, 55, 60 patients with Crohn's. Again, they just took them off carbohydrates and fiber. What else is left when you're not eating carbohydrates and fiber? It's really just meat, right? And so you put people on the no carbs, no fiber diet, and without medication. They say, okay, how long can you go without medication? And a lot of these were going 51 months without medication, right? And without a flare-up. And so that's over 4 years. And contrasted that with the control group that did not take out carbs and fiber, and they stayed in remission on average 0 months, right? Not a lot of months, right? So what does that mean? That means there's something in the carbs or the fiber or something that came along with one or both that is causing Crohn's disease. So, it's something that they need to know too. It's something that, going back to clinicians and just say, hey, I know you were doing your best. I know you wanted the best for me, but this actually worked better. And this is actually what's going on. And it's something that, you might look into. 95% chance they won't listen, but
I know.
5% chance they will. And if they do, that's really important, because then they'll start looking into it and they'll go, okay, maybe I'll look into that. And that's all it takes. And then all of a sudden you have this ripple effect out from that person as well. And they're treating their patients, they're talking to their colleagues, and they're doing what you and I are doing, which is, spreading the message.
Yeah. I find that the practitioners with maybe a less of an ego to protect are the ones who are willing to listen to me and who want to hear, like my infectious disease doctors for the CDiff. They're like, yeah, you can eat only meat. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. Or my chiropractor is like, this is incredible. I can't believe it's working. Tell me more. My rheumatologist asked me for my business cards to put in his office, but with the hospital that I was treated in and stuff, they're so brainwashed and also, I think, intimidated by new information that they're just not even welcoming to anything I have to say, which is heartbreaking, because they're the ones dealing with acute care patients, people who they're grasping at straws. So I'm trying to make a dent, but and this kind of leads me into a question that I didn't have planned, but what is your personal opinion on traditional medicine doctors these days? Why are they recommending grains and these foods that are literally killing us? Is it because they want us sick, or is it because they really mean well and they're not taught the right education, or is it a mixture of both?
Well, I think that clinicians on the ground are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to do what's right, and this is just what they're taught. And the people making those guidelines and those criteria, I think that some of them are certainly corrupted, either because they want people to be sick, or at least they're being paid to say something and they're not really thinking too much about it. And there are a lot of people that are financially compromised. Harvard is one of the most compromised medical schools as far as their faculty. They have some of the most compromised professors. Obviously, you want someone on your board of directors, on your this, that, and the other. You put their name if they're a professor at Harvard. So like, oh, I'm going to give this
Right.
guy $100,000 if we were able to put his name, on our board, and they'll get, 18, 20 different companies, giving them money every year to use their name and say, hey, they're a part of our company. And as a result, they are, they do have financial entanglements that sort of makes them a bit more suspect. And this actually came to light a few years ago at Harvard. A first year student asked basically about, they were talking about statins, and this guy was just going off about just the miracle of statins and how just wonderful they were. And she just asked, okay, what are some of the side effects? What are things we have to look out for negatively from statins? And this guy, he just started ridiculing her in the middle of class. First of all, I mean, extremely unprofessional as a professor. Just answer the damn question. Everything has side effects. I mean, if Tylenol, came on the market now, was trying to get, they wouldn't pass the FDA. It's its therapeutic window is that narrow. And so, obviously things have side effects. And so he just ridiculed her and just made fun of her. And she got really pissed. And so she looked into it, and she found that he had financial entanglements with a number of different statin companies. And she's like, this guy's completely biased. He's completely compromised. And they did an investigation. They found that most of them were. So they got, I forget the body that does it, but there was like a grading system on how compromised your faculty are. Harvard got an F, right? So they just completely failed. They had the worst grade possible as far as their conflicts of interest in their professors. So I think at that level, yes, you can have problems. Not necessarily that they want people sick, but just because they don't think it's that big a deal. And they're getting paid. People like Ansel Keys and those different Harvard professors that vilified fat, they were just greedy pricks, and they just sold their soul. I don't know if they had, malicious, their malicious intent or whatever, and they wanted people to suffer, but they certainly didn't care that they did, because they knew what they were saying was wrong. Now that gets us over to the food and drug companies, because there is something nefarious going on, because they're the ones writing the curriculum, right? Coca-Cola spends 11 times the amount of money on nutritional research than the NIH every year. That's just Coca-Cola. And all those big companies, there's like those 7 big food companies that just own everything.
Right. Yeah.
Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nestle. Kellogg's, those are some of the main ones. There's a few other that maybe General Mills, a few others ones, right? Just massive companies, right? And just Coca-Cola spends 11 times the amount of research than the NIH, right? So all the other ones are putting it out too. And that whole exercise is medicine, get out and run, and blah blah blah. That was founded by Coke, right? So Coca-Cola started that, and it was an antidote to like, hey, you should eat right. Like, no, it's exercise. Exercise is everything, right?
That makes sense.
Just don't worry about that. Don't look at the guy behind the curtain, just exercise, right? And so, that's a problem. Then the most crazy thing is that there's a religious faction behind not only the processed food company, but like the nutritional guidelines. And that's the Seventh-day Adventist Church. They actually, and this is all true, everyone can look this up, is well documented all over the place. And for a very comprehensive lecture on this, people should go look up Belinda Fettke on YouTube and look up her talks on nutrition. She's really uncovered all of this and broke the case open on this a few years ago. And in the 1800s, they had a prophetess named Ellen G. White, who had a vision from God that said, meat's bad, stop eating meat. Meat makes you feel lustful, makes you want to have sex. Lust is a sin, therefore meat is a sin. Everyone should stop eating meat. And so you should eat this bland processed food in order to suppress your natural urges, your base urges, right? And so that's what they did, and that's what they pushed out. And so she wrote tons and tons of books. Her typesetter, who was a child at the time, was a guy named John Harvey Kellogg, who she was very, enamored with, and sent him off to go to medical school. He became Dr. Kellogg. I think he became Congressman Kellogg at one point as well, and
Wow.
he founded Kellogg cereal. So he was fully indoctrinated into this way of thinking because he was setting the type on all of her books. So this was just ingrained in his head about how evil meat was, how horrible masturbation was. So he would circumcise boys and girls without anesthetic to stop them from masturbating, or like score girls, privates with acid and other
Oh
sorts of
my
caustic
gosh.
materials, because without anesthetic, because oh, we have to stop this masturbation. This is like the worst thing that you could do. This is like literally committing suicide. That's what they thought. And because that's what Ellen G. White wrote about. That was part of the temperance movement. There are two temperance movements, one for masturbation and sex, and the other one for alcohol. And they sort of teamed up. But
Wow.
so he was heavily involved in that. He founded Kellogg's cornflakes and Kellogg's cereals in order to suppress people's natural base urges, or if you understand biochemistry and physiology, our hormones, suppress
Right.
our health and our natural hormones, and make it so that our body's saying, hey, you're not healthy, you can't have kids, don't have sex, right? You're not going to be able to support another generation. But when you are healthy and your hormones are working properly, that's why your sex drive comes back, is because your body's saying, hey, things are okay, you could support another generation. Why don't you go out and do that? That's literally the meaning of life, is to make more life at all levels of life. That's what life does, is make more life. And so that's what our normal urges are. So it gets more crazy than this. So the Seventh-day Adventists, some of them, founded the American Nutritional and Dietetics Association in like 1917. So they
Wow.
started the university courses on nutritional sciences. So people say, well, the problem is that doctors aren't taught nutrition. Thank God, because that just is one less thing to just, de-indoctrinate people on one thing. No,
Right.
no, no, this is exactly how you do it. No, dear God, no. Like at
Mhm.
least that wasn't it. So they founded the nutrition sciences and the university level at the beginning. They wrote the first textbooks on it. The current edition is still in print. It's still in use in Ivy League nutrition courses,
Wow.
right? So they have been involved from the beginning. They're still involved. They write the curriculum. They write the textbooks, right? And so, and they have this religious bent. They founded Sanitarium Foods, which is the largest food company in Australia, or close to. And they're a multi-billion-dollar company. They have tax-exempt status because
Wow.
they're part of the church, right? So all of this goes
Wow.
towards pushing their agenda. Loma Linda Medical Center, this is where all of these studies, any plant-based study or whatever, you just send it to Loma Linda, peer-reviewed, yep, checks, goes through, plants are great, meat's bad. It's an absolute farce. And so they're the ones writing the curriculum. They're the ones setting that. They have a number, that the whole nonsense that people talk about meat being a carcinogen, which it is not.
Right.
The University of Washington published a massive paper last year, going through hundreds and hundreds of papers and meta-analyses and studies and actual interventional trials and all the best evidence. And they found there's no causal link, but really no even association between meat, even processed meat, and cancer, and certainly not unprocessed red meat and cancer. And they said that the studies that suggested there was a correlation, never causation, nothing has ever shown causation, but the ones that suggested a slight association were extremely poorly designed, lazy science, and just terrible examples that you couldn't use, and that's all the WHO used. So the WHO in 2015 said that processed meat is a carcinogen. What is processed meat processed with, right?
Yeah.
It's not more meat. They don't add
Right.
more meat, right? They're adding in plants and sugar and artificial ingredients.
Right.
So if meat's not a carcinogen, but processed meat is, obviously it's something that you've added in after the fact that is
Right.
carcinogenic, which are plants and artificial sweeteners. So again, there's nothing inherent in meat that's the problem. And so thinks about these things anymore. But if you did think about it, that's what you'd that's what you'd come to the conclusion of. And so in that 2015 recommendation, first of all, they did not say that red meat was a carcinogen. They said it's likely a carcinogen, but they couldn't actually find anything that said it was a carcinogen. But people just said, "Oh yeah, meat's a carcinogen." No, it's not. And the WHO didn't even say it was, right? They said, "Oh, it probably is." What an inappropriate and irresponsible thing to say, you know?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, but there were people on that panel that were saying which studies should we include, which ones shouldn't we, and what should we put forward as our opinion. And the ones that had any sort of sense were completely edged out, and they're saying like, yeah, we're not listening to you. And one of these guys said that it was the most, being a part of that panel was the most difficult thing he's ever done in his professional career, because he saw time and time again high level, very well designed studies and papers that were just thrown away and dismissed and ignored because they didn't support the, you know, the preconceived notion that that meat was bad. And they included a lot of very poorly designed, horrible associative studies that, you know, maybe just sort of barely you know, supported their agenda. And they said this was just ridiculous. And so they you know, they really disagreed, and they said, hey, you know, you're pushing this through, but you're all vegans, vegetarians, and Seventh-day Adventists. Like, you should, you know, disclose your biases, because that's
Yeah,
important. You know, you're saying that meat's bad and vegetables are good. You're all vegetarians and Seventh-day Adventists. You know, that's a bias. They refused. So you don't see that on
wow.
there. You don't see, they don't report their biases, which you're supposed to do. So it gets a lot worse than that. Think about it this way. Kellogg's is completely vertically integrated. So they will farm, you know, all the thing, all the different sorts of main crops that they want to farm. They'll outsource a few things, and then they'll make their product. They'll box it, they'll package it, they'll sell it off. So it's all vertically integrated, which is a good business model. But here's what's also vertically integrated. They're also in the pharmaceutical industry. Guess which drugs they make? Diabetes medication.
Yeah.
So they're giving you something that causes diabetes and screws with your blood sugar, and then they're selling you the pharmaceuticals to treat that. So that, I think, shows that they know what they're doing. And I think that's pure evil. So they are knowingly making people sick so that they can then sell them the antidote, which I think is honestly, I mean, you should be shot for something like that. I mean, you're
Yeah.
destroying people's lives and you're killing people. You're killing babies. Miscarriage rates goes way up with gestational diabetes, way up.
Mm,
Birth
mm,
defects, you know, congenital abnormalities, developmental delays, all these sorts of things. You're destroying people's lives and you're killing people, and you're doing it knowingly. You're doing something that you know causes derangement of blood sugar, insulin resistance, causes diabetes, gestational diabetes, and you know that this kills people and babies, and yet you're doing it, and then you're selling them some pharmaceuticals as a result of that. I think that is pure and total and utter evil. But I think that the doctors on the ground have no idea. You know, most of the
right.
people I talk to, when you talk to them and tell them about this, they're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Why doesn't everybody know this? Why isn't everyone doing this?" You know, and it's just a matter of time before more and more people do. And I think those are the people you target. You know, you talk to the clinicians, you talk to the doctors, you talk to the patients, and you get enough people having enough of an improvement and enough doctors saying, like, I am absolutely reversing diseases for the first time in my entire career. And it is the most satisfying thing that of my entire career. And you get more and more people doing that and talking about it, then I think we get a very powerful movement going. But yeah, no, I don't think doctors are doing this out of malice, but I do think that there is some of that up the chain.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I had no idea about Kellogg's being involved in the pharmaceutical industry.
Mm,
That just makes
yeah,
my, honestly, my face turn really hot. It just makes me so mad. Like, that
yeah,
is
me too.
wicked.
Yeah, that
That's
was something
horrible.
I just recently found out as well, that they're vertically integrated all the way up. So Belinda Fettke is very bright woman, and she's done a lot of research into this. Her husband is Dr. Gary Fettke. They live down in Tasmania. He's been an orthopedic surgeon for 30 plus years. He's just sort of going into retirement now. the reason she looked into all of this is because he sort of was on the ground floor of the low carb movement as far as medical faculty was concerned in Australia. And so he's been doing this for well over a decade. And, I first came about this because he had health issues himself that he then researched and found that going onto a ketogenic, high fat, meat-based diet would really help him. And it did. He ended up stopping the progression and actually shrinking an aggressive pituitary tumor that he
Wow.
had. And so, that was huge, so that really, saved his life and let him continue to be with his family and to work and so on. And so he saw this with his patients. Now he was doing things that other people didn't want to do. He was doing all the diabetic foot and toe amputations and all these sorts of things, which are not nice. They're not, the sexy operations. They are very unfortunate. You're dealing with very sick people. It smells pretty horribly, because you have rotting flesh that is dying and has to come off. That's why you have to amputate in most of these cases. And it's not fun, right? And so, but he was doing all these because someone had to. And he, felt for these people, and it just sort of came down to like these people losing their feet, both feet, all of a sudden, like, how are they going to walk, getting worse and worse, chopping more and more as you go up. And he found that if you put them on a ketogenic diet, you just change the way you eat, they wouldn't need an amputation at all. And they could stop their diabetes, and they could stop the progression of this horrific downward spiral, right? And so he was doing that, and he was actually curing people of their diabetes, stopping them from needing amputations. I mean, that's what a doctor is for. And he started getting, they tried to crucify him for what he was doing, for actually being a doctor, for actually curing people and actually helping people. How dare
Wow.
he? Right.
Wow.
And saving the system millions of dollars a year on all these, surgeries and things like that didn't need to happen. Right. Dr. Baker got attacked for the same thing. He started actually helping people, helping them so they didn't need surgery. And he wasn't bringing in all the, money to his surgical practice. And they were like, the hell is this guy doing? We want more money. And so, unfortunately, that's all too common. But with Dr. Fettke, it was a little worse because they had a lot of people really come after him, nutritionists and so on, that said, you're not allowed to give nutritional advice. You're not a nutritionist. And like, I'm a doctor. I can do what the hell I want with my patient. And of course I can give dietary advice. Like what doctor doesn't, I mean, how many times have people heard from their doctor, don't eat fat, don't eat cholesterol, lower your
Right.
cholesterol, blah, blah, blah. That's dietary advice, right? It's just the wrong dietary advice.
Right.
And so, but if you're towing the line, then it's okay. You go outside of that, then all of a sudden you're not allowed to give dietary advice. Well, you're not saying that to all the other people. So that's quite hypocritical and obviously ridiculous, and so they attacked him. But they had people like, they had so many people coming after him that his wife just looked at this and said, what the hell is happening? There's something else going on here.
Yeah.
Why are all these heads of nutritional sciences and companies and this, that, and the other, they actually found the minutes. They actually, like, I don't know how they got these things. They must have sued for them or something, but they got the minutes of these big food companies. And they were talking about how the low carb movement was hurting their sales, and their sales were down as a result of this. And so they were like, we need to target certain people that are big in this. And he was one of them. So there's like certain doctors around the world, and he was one of them. And they're like, we need to target this person and destroy them, destroy their credibility, so that they stop pushing this message that is costing us our bottom line. And so, she looked into this and was just like, okay, she had no idea where it was going to lead, but then she uncovered all of this mess with the Seventh-day Adventist Church and how heavily involved, how they founded the processed food industry in the first place. And how, Battle Creek, Michigan, where Kellogg's was set up, there were dozens of cereal companies founded in that area because he just influenced all these people. And hey, this works, and this is a good business model. So a bunch of people, post cereals, that was a guy that he treated that, was just like, that's a good idea. I'll start my own cereal company, and so a lot of other people did as well. And so, that they really founded the processed food industry. And so they're still heavily connected with, all the different processed food companies. And now there could be that sort of religious bent, or it could just be mostly monetarily driven at this point, or maybe a mixture of both. I mean, certainly for the other companies, it's probably just, financially, lucrative to keep this going. But, God knows with Kellogg's and Sanitarium, but that's another thing too. They're involving themselves in other aspects of medicine as well. There's a specialty called lifestyle medicine, and their idea is, and someone even said to me, like, hey, you should look into this lifestyle medicine thing. That might be a good sort of side fellowship for you to do, on top of neurosurgery and all that sort of stuff, because what they espouse is, eating a healthy diet and exercising, and having that and diet and lifestyle be medicine, right? Great idea. I exactly of that way of thinking. The problem is they are also founded by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the diet that they espouse is a vegan diet. So eat more grains, eat more vegetables, eat less meat. That's the diet. And you dig down in there, it's basically go vegan, right? And exercise. So it sounds great, but it is still the same ideological bent. And it was founded out of Loma Linda, California. Loma Linda Medical Center is the Seventh-day Adventist medical center and medical school. At least when I was going through and applying for medical school, you had to be a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in order to even apply. They wouldn't consider your application if you weren't. And so, there's 10 medical schools in California and at that time, and that was one of them. And so you go and you're looking at all the different ones, and Loma Linda, okay, what's that? And that was it. Like, you cannot apply unless you have a letter from your deacon saying that you're a member of good standing at the church.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so, and not a lot of people know this, but like, Pritikin, there was a Pritikin diet, which was like a low fat, still had meat, but it was like, just got rid of all meat, got rid of sugar, got rid of processed foods, got rid of all this sort of stuff. And that was supposed to be the heart healthy diet. He was an adjunct professor or associate professor at Loma Linda. He was a Seventh-day Adventist. And so he's pushing this sort of crap out too. It's involved everywhere. Walter Willett at Harvard, I believe he's a Seventh-day Adventist. Dr. Gundry, cardiothoracic surgeon, wrote the book, The Plant Paradox. And to me, it's not a paradox. He's saying, well, look at all these plants are so great. They're so good, but they have all these lectins and toxins, and you need to know how to deal with these things, but still eat plant-based, and it's like, that's a very different conclusion than I would have come to.
There was something wrong with that guy.
Right. Seventh-day Adventist Church. I believe he's a member, if I'm not mistaken, but I believe he's involved in that as well. So heavily involved. But the top nutritional researcher at Harvard is a Seventh-day Adventist. The members on the nutritional boards and committees at the WHO, Seventh-day Adventists, right? The different sorts of boards and bodies that come up with the guidelines in most countries, certainly in the West, Seventh-day Adventists. And it's not that Seventh-day Adventists are bad people, but at all. I know several of them are very, very nice people, but but that doctrine of meat is evil, meat is sinful, is pervasive, and that certainly is what they say from the top down. Not that everyone listens to that in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but that's certainly what the top tells people, that you should stay away from meat. Meat's sinful. And so it's not even that, oh, hey, it's better to eat this. It says meat is bad, anti-meat, not pro-plants, anti-meat. That's what they are. I'm anti-plants, and so that's how I came to it, sort of from the other direction. But no, it's very bad how involved these guys are. And so there are a number of different doctors that are, different TikTok doctors that go around trashing this, that, and the other, like that, Dr. Id's character. He's a lifestyle medicine doctor. And so you see this guy just angrily attacking anyone who has the tenacity to say that seed oils, which didn't exist 50 years ago, might not be great for us, or that sugar, probably not a good idea. He's, oh, well, this study and this, and that. Yeah. Who funded that study? The people that make the product? Okay, well then I'm not interested, but that's the thing. Coca-Cola puts out 11 times the amount of research than the NIH. So does Nestle, so does Pepsi, so does Kellogg's, and certainly Sanitarium and the Seventh-day Adventist. So the vast majority of nutritional science is bought and paid for by these different factions. And you cannot pay attention to it whatsoever.
It's incredible that it's just incredible that all this is happening with people being so unaware. I mean, I have friends at my CrossFit gym and just people I know who really think they're doing the best thing by not eating meat. And even my chiropractor who encouraged me because it was working for me, months later was like, well, I'm hearing things that red meat is not so good. So you should probably start introducing plants again. I'm like, and it's sad to me that people don't look into it. I mean, I've learned so much from you now, but I have a good sense of, okay, this is definitely not coming from a good, honest place. It's just like, you can't trust anyone. It's very sad.
Yeah. Well, it is difficult, there are vested interests and there are people that are conflicted for a number of different reasons. And not everyone knows all these different conflicts, like the Seventh-day Adventist church and things like that. And these nutritional, guy from Harvard, and no one knew that about him, or that mattered for any, in any particular sense. But it does, and even doctors and things like that, maybe they aren't conflicted. Maybe they're just like, well, this is just what they think the evidence shows, because there's just this preponderance of evidence that shows that eating plants
Right.
is good. Okay. But the preponderance of evidence is paid for by the industry,
Yeah.
and so it's not trustworthy, so it doesn't matter. They say, oh, there's 30 studies that say sugar is bad for you. There's 30 studies that say they don't. Oh, look, it's just a dead heat. We just need more.
Yeah.
We need more time. We need more studies. But when you look at it, and you look at nearly every single one of the sugar's okay, or at least not bad for you ones, are industry funded, and nearly every single one that says sugar's bad for you are independently funded. That should tell you what you need to know. Same thing with the seed oil and the canola oil and all these sorts of things. You can get a study that says anything, that concludes anything. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that proves anything. Just like have a study that shows that rocks fly up. So, they don't, so it's, it doesn't, just because there's a study that says something, doesn't mean any, oh, there's this preponderance. Oh, the majority of it doesn't matter. Reality is not established by consensus. The truth is not decided by majority vote, right? It just is.
Amen.
Something's
Yeah.
true, something's not true. Like facts are just facts. They're not assailable
Yeah.
by opinion or vote or consensus. I mean, we're learning things all the time. Every day we're uncovering something that we thought something we thought to be the case that is absolutely not the case. We're like, oh, okay, we need to change that. That happens every day, right? So why can't it happen here? No, that's established. No, the consensus is changing every day. So the consensus, fine. Well, this is what everyone believes. So you challenge the consensus. You should back it up. You should have evidence for that. You can't just say, well, I think you're full of it. You may, but you still need to back that up. But if you do, and there's evidence to support you, well, then it doesn't matter what the consensus is.
Yeah. Wow. Well, to sort of wrap things up, what would you say for a beginner? What would you say to someone who wants to get into this way of eating, is a little intimidated? For example, sometimes when I work with people, some people do better if they just focus on eating more protein instead of going cold turkey. And some people do better going cold turkey. So what is your advice to a beginner? Does it kind of depend on the individual, or what would you say to that person?
Well, I think it is mostly up to the individual. People need to sort of see what the type of person that they are. But study after study shows that quitting something addictive, such as cigarettes or alcohol or other sorts of addictive substances, that cold turkey works better more often. Not that you can't quit otherwise, but people tend to have, percentage wise, more of a success when going cold turkey. I think of it this way: if you wean down and you wean down and you wean down, eventually you just have to stop. Eventually you're going to go cold turkey. There is going to be an end date there, right? So why not make it today? Right? Diet starts Monday, I'll do it tomorrow. That's a recipe for never getting anything done. At some point you need to decide, today's the day, I'm not doing that anymore. And then you just stop. When you say, well, I'll cut down, and eventually I'll get off, it's never going to happen. Sometimes you have to say, I am stopping now.
Right.
And so if you are one of those people that just say like, I can't get my head around this right away. I can't just jump full into it. You need to have a plan. You
Yeah.
need to say, okay, I'm cutting out carbs, sugar, seed oils, alcohol, grains, all that sort of stuff today. Next Friday, you mark it on the calendar. I'm cutting out, high oxalate foods and all these sorts of, I'm
Sure.
cutting out nightshades. Next week, I'm cutting off this. The next week, I'm cutting off this. And the next week, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
just on meat and water. So you have a plan that you can track down. If it just is
Mm.
going to happen sometime in the future, it's never going to happen. It's like those people that are, quitting smoking for 20 years, and oh yeah, I'm trying to quit, trying to quit, trying to quit. Yeah, okay, but you've been saying that for 20 years, right? So it's not happening. At some point, you just have to quit. I find that you're never going to be more motivated to change your life than that second that you decide to do it. And
True.
so I think it's really important for those who feel up to it to just strike while the iron's hot. Literally go home, throw out all the different food and
Yeah.
garbage and crap that you have in your pantry and in your fridge, or give it away to someone you don't like and you want to be sick, and so just have them eat it, and just start over, start fresh, because like, if you're going to quit smoking, quit heroin, I mean, do you really want to keep a whole bunch of packs of cigarettes and heroin around the house? No, probably not. When you have a moment of weakness, it's very easy to grab something if it's right there in front of you, right? Or you're seeing it all the time. You're like, oh, I kind of want that. Not everyone can do that. You're living in a house with other people, or who aren't okay with that, and they don't want to go along with you on that journey. Well, then you have to do what you have to do. But I would suggest getting on it. The people that say, well, I just bought a bunch of groceries and I don't want
Yeah.
to just waste them, so I'll work my way through those and then I'll start. They never start.
Right.
you know they're not going to be as motivated. Oh well, maybe after that, and I had 3 hot dogs, I ran out of hot dog buns, so I bought a hot dog, but that only comes in 12s, and so now I need, okay, I'll get 9 more hot dogs. It's just like you're just playing that stupid game. You're just buying more and more ingredients to go with what you're doing, and you just never stop. Right, at
Yeah.
some point you have to stop. At some point you have to just get rid of it. And if you bought cigarettes or something like that, and you're like, I'm going to quit smoking, I'm going to stop it today. I just bought 2 cartons, so obviously I don't want to waste it. So I'll just finish smoking those. And then no, you're not going to stop at that point. You're not going to be motivated at that point. You need to get rid of them, give them
Yeah.
away, throw them away. Right. And what would you do if you found a pack of cigarettes in your kid's pants or a bag of cocaine? We said, well, they spent money on it, I don't want to just throw it out. No, you
Right.
just throw that out immediately, and then you beat them most likely, and so it's something that you don't actually, but you you
Punishment for sure.
yeah, you definitely punish them. But but the thing is that you have no angst throwing away something that is completely out of left field. You're like, look, that does not belong in the house. I don't care if it costs you money, you shouldn't have bought it in the first place, right? Well, fine, now I don't want that in the house. I don't care that it costs money. Like, what's going to cost more money in the long run? Your $400 worth of groceries, or your $3,000 a month in medications
Yeah.
and foot amputations, and not being able to walk properly, live properly, breathe properly, function properly, putting on weight, losing health. Losing out on that grocery money is nothing. You can give it to a food shelter. They would really appreciate it. They would really benefit from it.
Right.
And so it's something that I think most people do better with if they just bang hit it. And the thing is too, is that it just gets it done, right? Because you're going to have some carb cravings, you're going to have some withdrawals from sugar.
Right.
You might get a keto rash, all these sorts of weird reactions from the detox, from getting these things out of your system, from your hormones changing, all these sorts of things. It's a bit weird, and some people have a bit of a weird time with it at first. Most people will just fly right through it and just feel better right away. Not everyone does, and certainly most people have cravings at least. And so you start that, you get all that stuff out of it, and then you start looking forward to what's going to happen. Okay, in 2 weeks, most of this crap is going to be out of your system, and most of the carb cravings and sugar cravings are going to be gone, especially if you're eating enough fatty meat. If you're still getting cravings, you're not eating enough. Keep eating meat
Yeah.
if you get a craving. After that, you're going to feel better than you've ever had in your entire life, and your body's going to start working better than it ever has in your entire life. and your body's going to start transforming. You're going to start losing excess weight. If you haven't, you're going to start putting on healthy weight, muscle and bone tissue, and you're just going to feel healthier and healthier and healthier. After about 3 months, you're going to quadruple the number of mitochondria you have. They're going to be 4 times as efficient and effective as well. You're going to have more energy. Your brain's going to work better. Your body's going to work better. You're going to feel, again, even better. After a while, you're going to get these seed oils, which have long half-lives. They're going to be up to 4-year half-life. You're going to just feel better and better and better. The more you go, the longer you go, the better you feel, the more your hormones heal, the more your body heals, the better you're going to feel. But it actually comes pretty quick. After you get this acute toxic junk out of your system, about 2 weeks. Alcohol takes about 3 weeks. You're going to feel better than you ever have in your entire life. So why not get on that now? You're seeing other people. The reason that you wanted to do this is because you want to get your health back. You're seeing all these people, lose weight, gain health, put on muscle, feel great, age backwards. People are coming out of nursing homes. I had an 86-year-old patient I was told about by a geriatrician friend of mine who came across my videos and had checked himself into a nursing home because he couldn't take care of himself at home anymore. It's very sad. So he basically checked himself into a nursing home, basically to die. And sort of his last ditch effort at getting his life back was to go carnivore. Within 3 months, he was back living at home, fully independent, lifting weights 3 days a week, swimming twice a week, and off all medications. Right.
Goodness.
So this guy got his life back. Right. And so, and then people will go like, okay, well, you did all that. You came out of the nursing home, you stopped dying, you're working out, you've got this life back of, a 40-year-old and you're 86, but you better watch out on all that red meat. I mean, you'd have to be insane to say that. Right. And so, like you're going to die if you keep eating that red meat. Well, at least he has a life to lose, whereas before he didn't.
Right.
He was basically just waiting to die,
Yeah.
by his own words. He's just like, I'm going in here just waiting to die. Right. Now he has a life to lose. Right. So whatever happens to him after that, he's already good, because he's on borrowed time, and
Right.
so, that's a plus. And so you can get this stuff. And so you're looking at these people getting their life back, getting their health back. I talked to a woman earlier today. She went from 700 pounds down to now 300 pounds in 18 months. So she's lost 400 pounds in 18 months. For people that do kilos, that's 180 kilos she lost. She was like 320 kilos, dropped 180 kilos. So massive. And she has her life back. Right. And so now she can walk again.
Yeah.
We take that for granted. Some people cannot do it. Right. Or can't do it safely and comfortably. Now she can do it. That's amazing, getting that back. So if you're in that position that you want that, or you're a younger person and you just say, I just want to be the biggest badass I can for the rest of my life. I want to play sports. I just want to, crush it out there. There's no time like the present. This is exactly when you want to do it. You're not going to get those benefits until you start doing it, and you start doing it full on. And so you're motivated to do it. You're seeing it. Just do it. Just get on, start eating fatty meat until it stops tasting good. Don't eat anything else. Right. I think it's just as important what not to eat as what to eat. I came from this, from the negative side of thing. I'm not going to eat that. So I just ended up eating a lot of meat. And so I think it's important what not to eat. So no plants or fungus, no sugar or any sweeteners, nothing artificial. And that goes for sauces, seasonings, and drinks as well. If you want to do this, what I think is the most optimal way. And so you just do that. Get rid of all the plants, get rid of all the processed garbage, get rid of all the sugar, get rid of all the cooking oils. Don't use any of that nonsense. Only cook with fat, tallow, lard, butter, ghee, and just eat meat. Just eat meat, be happy, eat to satiety, eat till it stops tasting good, enjoy every meal, and just enjoy your life. And that's all you have to do. It's the easiest, way of eating in the world, because it's perfectly in tune with our nature. It's perfectly in tune with our biology, which should tell you something. And you don't have to portion control. You don't have to calorie count. You just eat until it stops tasting good. You eat as much as you want to eat. And then it stops tasting good. You don't want to eat anymore. So you stop. You drink to thirst. You don't have to count calories. You don't have to eat at certain times of day. You could eat at 2 a.m. if you want to. The reason that it's not a good idea to eat right before bed is when you're eating carbohydrates, your blood sugar goes up. That raises your insulin. Insulin blocks the secretion and action of growth hormone. After you go to sleep is your maximal expulsion of growth hormone, right? And so
Right.
this is very, very important for our health, well-being, and growth, and so on. And so if you eat right before bed, you're blocking that. And you're not only blocking, it's going to secrete less, but what little comes out is now going to be less active, right? And so this makes no sense for gym bros who want to like put on a bunch of weight and things like that, because you're secreting growth hormone all day, every hour for guys, every 90 minutes for women. And you kick out a lot more if you're lifting weights and sprinting and working out, right? And so if you're just eating a bunch of carbs all day and you're keeping your insulin up, you're
Wow.
trashing
Yeah.
your growth hormone, right? So your workouts, you don't get as much out of your workouts. I guarantee you, none of those guys get
Yeah.
as much out of their workouts as I do. I'll do the exact same amount of working out for the exact same amount of time, exact same effort, and I will get more out of it, right? But I'm also able to push myself harder. I'm able to go harder for
Yeah.
longer, recover quicker, and go again. And so I will always compete, outperform, simply because of how I eat. And there's so many things that that are wrapped up in this way of eating, and you just get better and better and better and better. And so why wouldn't you want to start right now?
That's so, so good. You are very, very knowledgeable for how many things you haven't gone through personally. Like your advice to basically use motivation as momentum, to jump on that motivation, is that speaks really clearly to me. When I was struggling to get on the carnivore route, part of the problem was that I didn't do well with beef. I had really bad histamine intolerance. But the other part of the problem is that I had this big bag of keto treats and it was disgusting. It was like half-eaten Quest bars and nasty peanut butter cups. And I had to have someone lock this bag into a bedroom for me every time I tried to do carnivore, but I knew it was in the bedroom. And so the time that it worked was after I really surrendered everything to Christ. And I realized this is an idol. I've got to get rid of it. And so I actually threw away most of it, gave some things to a homeless person, and I was a success. And then I did the lamb, of course. And that really hit home because that bag held me back for a long time. And a lot of people who want to finish their groceries and things like that, it's like, it's not fuel. Food is, I think another problem is that people are brainwashed to think that anything in a package is fuel. Anything you buy in the grocery store is fuel. And it's not. A lot of it is poison and you just want to throw it out. And that's takes some adjusting for people, but awesome, awesome advice. Thank you so, so much. This is probably one of the best talks I've ever had.
Oh, that's
I've
good.
learned so much and I would love to have you on again. I would love to have you at any of my retreats.
Yeah.
What can we look forward to coming from you? I know you've put out so much content. Are you working on anything? Or are you just kind of doing your thing?
Well, I still put out regular podcast episodes. So I interview other people that I just think add something to it. I almost actually stopped my YouTube channel and podcast just because I made all the videos that I thought were really important, that just sort of got the information out there the way I wanted people to hear it. And I was just like, well, I don't want to just keep putting stuff out there. It's just going to just drown out the message and make things sort of water it down. But I've met so many people that have such an amazing story to tell and something to add to it, and different doctors and experts that are just like, hey, I've been doing this research and this adds right into yours. Like, look at that. I'm like, that's amazing. Yeah, let's definitely talk about that. And people like yourself
Yeah.
who gone through, amazing, changes and recoveries in your own health and are helping other people do it. I think those are really important stories to tell. So I still do those. I sort of put out 2 a week generally. And I sort of missed this week, but usually Mondays and Thursdays, Perth time, which is Sunday, Wednesday, US time. And then I've started doing regular YouTube lives on Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, which is 9 a.m. Perth time on Friday. So I'm doing those regularly now. And I've got
Awesome.
a couple other sort of things that I do as well. Sometimes I'll join in with another live group with a number of other people on Saturdays, really Friday night. But other than that, I'm just doing conferences. So if people are in Australia, I'll be speaking at the How to Carnivore conference, just like a metabolic health summit where we're talking about, carnivore and a lot of things we spoke about today, but other things as well. And going to a regenerative farm, the Wolke farm, and showing like this is how they raise animals,
Awesome.
just the animals have, they tested them, they have 5-6 times the amount of micronutrients that
Wow.
normally raised animals have. So they're much more healthy as an animal. They're having a much nicer life, which I am
Yeah.
really in favor of. And I think
Yeah.
most people are. I think we all share that vegan sentiment that we don't want to see animals suffer,
Right.
especially if they are going to be providing us food. I think that's very important that they don't, if we're going to use them as food. And so they have a better life, and they're also better for us, so that's really interesting as well. Then I'll be speaking at it's the Metabolic Health Summit in San Diego as
Awesome.
well, sort of mid August. So that's August 16th to the 20th. I'll be giving a lecture on glioblastoma and brain cancer, and ketogenic metabolic therapy, and how this can help, and the evidence for that, and the studies that are out supporting that, and the new research that's up and coming. So I'll be doing that, and yeah, and just doing things as they come up.
That's incredible. Thank you so, so much. I can't thank you enough. I really hope to stay in touch with you, and I would love to do this again. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're very
Appreciate it.
welcome. It was a pleasure, and thank you very much for having me. I'd be happy to
Thank
do it
you.
again anytime.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care.
You too.
Hi, you guys. So, my fall retreat is more than halfway booked. I know that you guys may have already heard of it. We're going to have a dream team of special guests. We have Ken Berry, Maria Emmerich, Kelly Hogan, Neisha Berry, and Lisa Wiedemann. So, we're all going to be together. This is going to be invaluable fellowship, breakthroughs, learning, eating the highest quality, best, most delicious meats like Billy Doe meats, North Star bison. I'm going to be making my carnivore treats, carnivore brownies, carnivore carrot cake, carnivore ice cream. And then of course we'll have Maria with us, so she's going to do some cooking with us. It's going to be so awesome. For those of you who don't do sweeteners, we will be with Emily Harveau and Kelly Hogan as well. They don't do sweeteners. Lisa doesn't do sweeteners. So we're going to have options for everyone. It's just going to be absolutely incredible. So we're in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, October 11th through 16th. This is when the fall colors are peaking. The weather is phenomenal. If you're interested, please email me directly at rebecca@tailoredketo.health. I'll send you the information. I'll send you an invoice when you're ready to pay. The only way to reserve your spot is with payment, and then you'll be locked in. I hope to see you there.